Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jake Spano. I am the mayor of St. Louis Park, and welcome to the 2018 State of the City Address. Each of your council members and city staff are going to be here today to kind of walk you through the last year and all the things. It's been a very busy year. Just ask the staff. They'll walk you through a lot of the things that have been happening in St. Louis Park. And so I'm going to sort of spare you all the customary throat clearing and introductory remarks, but I do have a couple things that I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows. First off, the food today is from Afro Deli, so thank you very much to them. Also, all of your food cups, forks, plates, napkins, all of that is compostable. So where you see it says organics recycling, everything that you've got can go into that bin. All right? I've seen a few confused faces, people kind of walking up going, silverware, I don't know. And the only other recommendation that I would make is not to do what Clint Pyrus, our Communications and Technology Department Director did, which is to put the hot Somali tea into the clear plastic cups. We saved him, but it will melt your cup. There are other cups up there that you can use. Most importantly, I have something that is very important that I just want to make sure I have everyone's attention before we begin today. Just a very important announcement that I want to make sure everybody knows about. The bathrooms are through those doors right back there. So, with that, I would like to introduce one of my new colleagues, Ward 3 Council Member Rachel Harris, and our Senior Planner, Meg McMonigal, who are going to start us off today. Thank you very much. Go for it. Yep.
Thank you, Mayor. Meg McMonigal and I are here to share with you about the Vision 3.0 as well as the comprehensive plan. And the Vision 3.0 is something that the city takes on a 10-year basis to be stewards of our community and our resources. We also do this to find out what is important to you. So in your life and at home or at work or maybe with your family, think about what you've done over the last year. You may have planned for a trip or for a work retreat, and so I want to do a quick interactive exercise with you this evening. It's another way that we illustrate how the city is committed to engaging with our public, engaging with people. And so I invite you to reflect just for a moment, looking at your last week, your last month, or your last year on a plan that you undertook with your coworkers or maybe with your friends or your family. And then I'll ask you to raise your hand here in just a sec. All right, so you have something in mind. So who in the room has ever been involved with planning? All right, yeah, look around. There are a few hands raised, most of the people in the room. It's a common practice. It's something that the city takes on a weekly, monthly basis, but we have a special event to every 10 years to do this Vision 3.0, as I mentioned, to get your input. And up here on the slide, oh dear, I can't see it very well. Okay, over here. So much technology. Okay, great. So with the Vision 3.0, there was a steering committee who went out and facilitated conversations, and we had 1,500 people who participated. That's a lot of people. So it was really wonderful to get so much input. And out of all of those conversations, there were more than 4,500 comments received. So that data was then categorized by theme, and out of it, there were 5 themes that emerged. And this is all of your feedback. This is you telling us what's important to you. Develop creative housing solutions. Develop future-focused transit and mobility. Also, continue to lead in environmental stewardship. Prepare our next generation for the future. You'll notice a lot of future-oriented themes here. And then finally, commit to being a leader in racial equity and inclusion. Meg is here with me this evening to share how we take that information and be strategic with it and incorporate it into the comprehensive plan. Okay.
Thanks, Rachel. You should know Rachel was a member of the Vision Steering Committee, and she was one of the people who was out and about. I think we were together at Fair for All at one of the local churches, and all of our steering committee members did a really nice job with Vision to get that much input. So while Vision is a big picture for the community, we take that and put it into our plan, our comprehensive plan, and there we develop the goals, strategies, and actions to carry out the vision. So we spent additional time this fall looking at developing those themes and holding neighborhood planning workshops. We held 4 planning workshops within our neighborhoods where people could come in and work with their neighbors, and you can see in the picture there, on items within their neighborhood. We had 130 participants, really great turnout. And people were really engaged talking about their communities, and we asked them questions about everything from environment to getting around town to housing to land uses and commercial uses in their neighborhoods, and we got really great feedback. So we're using that to develop the plan. We are required by state law, we're on a 10-year planning cycle, and we're required to update our plan, as is every community in the metro area, and I think there are 81 of them. And they have a number of requirements because we are in a region and we have a lot of regional systems. For example, the entire sewer system is one system that Metropolitan Council runs, and there are a lot of other things that we have to plan together with our surrounding communities. So Metropolitan Council provides us a system to do that, and one thing they do is growth projections for all of the communities and the metro area at large. And you can see from this chart that what we have here is the best kind of growth, which is slow and steady. And that is really important. I have worked in communities where it's fast and furious or erratic, and those are both really difficult ways to do planning and provide community services. So we do like to go beyond the required elements. We, for example, will take that input that we got from our neighborhood planning workshops, and we create plans for each of our 35 neighborhoods in the community. And that's really helpful for everyone in the community. And so we're drafting the plan now. We'll have additional review and public input in the spring, and then we'll have a draft plan in June, and we have a 6-month review period that's required by state law. And so how does the vision and comprehensive plan work together? One of the things that we've continually heard, for example, is that people want more and more sidewalk and trails in the community. And we've heard that not only this past year with all of our vision input and in our neighborhood planning workshops, but we have heard it for years, and probably every survey we've done emphasizes that. It's always one of the #1 things. So our current plan, we have planned for completing the sidewalk and trail system in the community and bikeways, and we took that plan and put it into action over the past 10 years, and we have a Connect the Park plan, which you may have heard of, where we're putting bikeways and filling sidewalk gaps throughout the community. And besides being just a way to, recreate or walk to a neighbor's house, we're really creating an alternate transportation plan. We're going to be very lucky to have that in the future when we can hopefully do more with fewer cars, right? So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. All right. And up next, we have Tim Browson, fellow council member, and Shannon Pintz.
Hello, everybody. It's always an honor to appear at this event because I feel like I'm in the room of truly the dignitaries of St. Louis Park and the real community leaders, because I recognize a lot of the faces here, and you guys do so much to make this such a strong and vibrant community. So I want to thank all of you. On the environment, our Vision 3.0 recommendation is to continue to lead in environmental stewardship and ensure access to green space for future generations. It says here in my notes that the city's uniquely positioned to affect positive change on the local level. And realistically, the cities are where climate action and climate response is really going to have to happen. We don't seem to have leadership from Washington, D.C. currently. The state is kind of reticent to be doing this type of work, and the rubber really hits the road in the cities. So we're going to have to be responsive, be resilient as a community. And we're working on that in a regional collaborative with other cities here in the metro area and throughout the state. We're also working on our climate action plan. And I'm sure many of you have already heard that we recently adopted a Climate Action Plan 2040, which pledges the city to be carbon neutral by 2040 and be using 100% renewable energy throughout the entire city by 2030. And one of the things we really had pushing us on this was the youth of our city. The high school students came to us and demanded action from us. They said that, you know, look, we're the ones that are going to have to live with the results of your inaction if you don't start taking action. And we responded, I'm happy to say. A lot of citizens got involved in the process, and we worked hard to develop that climate action plan. So with that, I'd like to invite Shannon up here to share some of the details with you.
Thank you, Tim. I'm Shannon Pence, the Environment and Sustainability Coordinator. And I'd just like to add a little bit to what Tim mentioned. So as he mentioned, the youth were instrumental in getting us to doing a climate action plan sooner rather than later. So we have to thank them for that. They asked us to create a plan that significantly reduces our city's greenhouse gas emissions to levels that would protect our community's children and grandchildren from the risk of climate destruction. And that's out of their climate inheritance resolution. So that's language that was in the resolution. And so with the help of our sustainability commissioners, the youth in the community, staff, and other volunteers, we believe we produced a plan that delivers on that. And so as you heard, our ambitious goal is to be carbon neutral by 2040. And yes, it's the most ambitious plan in the state right now. So we'll see if any other cities decide to jump on board with a similar goal. So how are we going to do all this? I think we must admit it will not be easy, and nothing worthwhile ever is. So this year we're going to kick it off with 3 Kickstart projects. We're going to try to increase public and electric vehicle infrastructure, and we already have a cohort with other cities and staff involved in looking at that. We are going to be creating a robust resource hub in the near future so that all of the resources for every different kind of stakeholder in our community can find resources on how they can be involved and participate. And we will continue to partner with our youth members. We have youth members on our commission, and then we have youth in the schools who are helping promote this, challenge us, hold our feet to the fire, and make sure that our projects and our decisions have a sustainable lens within them. And they are also hoping to have a kickoff for the Climate Action Plan on Earth Day this year. So stay tuned for more on that. As Tim mentioned, we have some midterm goals at 2030. So if you look for our plan on the website, you'll see there are several midterm goals to hit at 2030, and renewable electricity at 100% is one of those that we're going to be shooting for. The city has already started working on many projects. So we have solar arrays on Fire Station 2 and the Municipal Service Center, and those are live now. And we have 4 buildings that are on 100% renewable electricity already. So we have already started making great strides within city operations. That being said, city operations are less than 2% of the emissions in our city. So we are asking the entire community to participate where they can, when they can. And there will be more information forthcoming to help do that. But we are going to be looking for partnerships, incentives, and providing additional resources. And we want to help all the stakeholders in our community so that we can achieve this goal. So I'll pass it back to Tim.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a couple more words to say on this subject. This is going to be the biggest challenge that faces us as a community and as a species. We really have to address climate change. We have to respond. And we can lead, but we need everybody to participate. And we hope to lead. We're currently looking at the Westwood Hills Environmental Center, a rebuild there. And we're still discussing the details and the size, other things, but we're going to try to make that a 100% sustainable living building for the community. And we're going to try to do that with all our buildings in the future, and it's going to take all of us to be part of this. So we're asking you and inviting you and pleading with you to help. Next, we're going to have Margaret Rogg, another new city council member, and Deb Heiser talking about transportation issues.
I know, right? My little intro hinges on the fact that we were going to follow environment and housing, so I got all panicky there, but I think it's okay. So it's good that we're sandwiched between environment and housing because, in my view, transportation is so closely tied to both the environment and to housing. By the way, I'm Margaret Rogg, City Council member for Ward 1, recently elected, new to all this stuff. So the recommendation out of Vision 3.0 is to develop future-focused transit and mobility solutions. In the last iteration of our comp plan in 2009, there was a chapter called Transportation. This iteration, it's called Transit and Mobility. And I think that language change reflects all the different ways that we are getting around now and all the new ways we're going to be getting around in the near and more distant future. So that future includes electric cars, includes traditional cars, includes driverless cars, also called autonomous cars, bikes, electric bikes, and possibly Uber air taxis. Just for fun. Anybody read the Star Tribune a couple days ago? Uber says by 2023, they're going to have these city air buses. Just thought I'd pass that around. So as far as I know, landing pads are not in the SIP, but we'll see. So the future is also good old-fashioned walking. And in my view, St. Louis Park is prepared and preparing for all these different modes. So something we're hearing and reading a lot about these days is mass transit, and rightly so. It's an important component of mobility for all of us. And we continue to say that Southwest Light Rail Transit is coming. I believe it's coming. I think it's coming. And the wish for light rail came through loud and clear in the visioning process as well. And Deb's going to update us on the details of that shortly. So another thing that came through was the need in the visioning process was the need for better intercity mass transit for people who don't own cars, others who can't or don't want to drive, or for seniors. And so on that note, I'm pleased to report that our city is working with the Metropolitan Transit Commission to add north-south routes in the city. It's still a work in progress, but hopefully that's something we're going to see. But there's a lot more to do, and I'm going to work with my colleagues to make sure that we do it. Regarding infrastructure, we have hundreds of miles of streets, alleys, sidewalks, bikeways, bridges, and so forth in St. Louis Park. And Deb is going to share specifics on some recent and upcoming projects. And as an elected official, I now have the privilege and honor of receiving resident complaints while these projects are underway, so thank you. And I get it, I empathize, and my colleagues and our great staff are going to do everything we can to mitigate problems. But at the same time, I'm relieved that we as a city are committed to maintaining the integrity of our infrastructure. It's a hassle while it's being done, but it's critical work. We'll have no bridges falling down here in St. Louis Park. So thank you for your past and future patience while this work is being done, including the future Wooddale project, bridge project, right? 3 cheers, coming soon. So these are the overarching goals we've committed, there are a couple overarching goals we've committed to as a city and that we're tying all of our work to. They're future forward goals and they're proactive and they're about creating a better future. And I'm super excited and interested to be in a community that's made these commitments. The first is Climate Action Plan, which we heard a little bit about. And regarding mobility, so our transit mobility plans will align with and support climate action, including reducing vehicle emissions and reducing vehicle miles traveled. So in the next year, you heard about installing electric vehicle charging stations and identifying ways to increase the number of electric cars used in the city. We're also looking to reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled. For example, just this week, earlier this week, we had a study session on solid waste. And I think our decision to stick with every other week recycling was informed in part by our desire to cut in half, or not double, I should say, the number of trucks traveling through the city each week. A little bit more of a hassle for people, but worth it in terms of the environmental impacts. And we're going to continue to encourage and promote biking and walking. So we're going to go from 6 to 32 miles of bikeways in the next 5 years. And Deb was telling me just yesterday that we're using new tools to help us reassess and refine our plan for bikeways, identifying hot spots, schools, parks, shopping, entertainment, and making sure that we have bikeways that go all the way from one to the other. So the other overarching goal that we've committed to, and this is the end of my remarks, is racial equity. We have so much to learn and do in this area. It intersects with everything we do as a community and as a country. Some areas related to transit and mobility that we're already doing or starting to do include the following. We take a systematic approach to repairing and replacing our streets and sidewalks. It's not complaint-driven. And that's because many residents won't complain to the government about problems and expect them to be resolved. We don't have a good history of that in America for some populations. So it's more equitable to systematically move through the city and improve our streets and sidewalks in an ordered way and not react to the loudest voices. And this year, we're also undertaking a gap review of our sidewalks. Deb just told me about this yesterday. It's exciting. We're identifying what's sometimes called the last mile from high-density areas, which include many of our rental properties, to everyday destinations like bus stops and Walgreens, and making it easier and safer for low-income residents who often don't have cars to get to these everyday destinations. So there's a lot going on. Transit and mobility work is supported by our engineering department of 13 people doing all this excellent work. They do a great job under some very difficult circumstances. So thank you to them, and on to Deb for the details.
The one thing that, and thank you, Margaret. My name's Deb Heiser. I'm the engineering director. And bottom line on all this stuff, Margaret had it absolutely correct. We can't do this without the patience and the support of the community. The old joke is that in Minnesota, there's 2 seasons. What are they? Winter and construction. So just like to say thank you to everyone for your patience. This last year, we had a pretty major project in Texas. I know that there was transit, there were buses moved to Sumter in order to make sure that we had that north-south connectivity for those transit users, those transit-dependent people. Texas Avenue was closed, and all those people had to go somewhere else. And so thank you so much for everybody for your patience. But the new Texas Avenue is a much different street. We have created green space on Texas Avenue. We have a living streets policy that we've been working on with the Environment and Sustainability Commission as well as with the council to put green back into our right-of-ways. Texas Avenue is going to have street trees planted this year. We're going to have a bikeway on Texas Avenue as well as new sidewalks, new pavement. We have a speed board out there to kind of educate drivers that it is 30 miles an hour. Please go 30 miles an hour on Texas. That was a wonderful project. The neighborhood was incredibly supportive and very patient. We have a couple more things to wrap up this year, but we're really proud of what we were able to accomplish, the council's support. We worked with CenterPoint Energy on a gas main replacement out there too, so there was a lot of stuff happening during that construction season last year. The next project that I'm just going to touch briefly on is the West 37th Street Road and Bridge construction. This is our brand new bridge. So down in the southwest area of town, down by Knollwood Target, 37th Street is that road that connects Aquila into the Target parking lot. The bridge needed to be repaired. No bridges falling down in St. Louis Park. But this brand new bridge was raised and it was changed. And if you can kind of see the side right here, we actually are interfacing with the creek itself. So if you're kayaking or canoeing on Minnehaha Creek, you can see that that's the 37th Street Bridge. It looks nice from the water. It looks nice from up above when you're driving. And also we have sidewalks now on both sides. We have a wider, safer pedestrian connection. We have lighting on the bridge that was not there before. Again, trying to create that safe, that feel that it's welcome to be on your feet or on your bike or in your car in these areas. That project is done. We got to do some aesthetics this next year. The bridge itself needs to be stained, and there's some additional things that needs to happen this next spring. But that was, again, thanks to the businesses down there. They had that bridge out of commission for 5 months last year. The next project I'm just going to briefly touch on, 169. Now, this was a MnDOT project. I had nothing to do with it. not nearly as involved as the 100 project. If you recall, I think that was, I'm trying to block out, I think it was 2 years ago. But the 169 project did affect us, and it did affect our neighborhoods. 169 was closed south of St. Louis Park, and there was a lot of traffic detours and things like that Edina was dealing with. We were very fortunate. There were some cut-through traffic, but we have a better road now. The 16th Street, the southbound ramp for southbound 169 onto 16th, that was closed. We have now a visual barrier installed on the west side of 169. We also have a safer way. How many of you get onto 169 at Cedar Lake Road? Yep, and we've got that wider merge lane and making it easier for people to get up to speed. So all of those things were a part of that project, and again, investing in making it easy for people to get onto our highways so they're not using Aquila or they're not using those local streets for their through trips. Finally, 2018, what do we got in store for you? Okay, every year, and Councilmember Rogg had mentioned this, every year we do a pavement management project. We have 8 different pavement management areas, and we rotate around the city, and we do about 5 miles of pavement replacement. And we do about 2 to 3 miles of water main replacement to make sure that we can have that infrastructure that's going to last for another 30 to 50 to 100, for water main, about 100 years. As a part of that, so we only inconvenience the neighborhoods once, that Living Streets policy, we take a look at everything in the neighborhood. This year's project is going to be in the Elmwood, Brooksides, and Brooklawns neighborhood, and we've been working with them since February of last year to talk about what that looks like. We have a project with a street replacement. We have a project that is going to have about 1.1 miles of new sidewalk connections being built. There's also going to be some traffic calming. Traffic gets excited sometimes. So we're going to be installing some physical, some engineered, some actual infrastructure out there that will reduce cut-through traffic. And we actually had a whole traffic study that we worked on this last year where we installed it temporarily from August to November in the neighborhood. And then we measured and we saw, did it make a difference? There was some concern about speeds. There was some concerns about cut-through traffic and how to get in and out of that neighborhood. So all of these things are going to be incorporated into this project. The project will start in May. It'll go through November. And again, thank you for your patience. That area is down by Fire Station number 1 and trying to work around the Fire Station open house. It's in the spec, I promise. So as a part of that, that's going to be coming up for that project. Texas Avenue, again, it's going to look like we're sticking around in the same place. We're working with the City of Hopkins on a Texas Avenue project that goes from Highway 7 down to Lake Street. That's a border street for us. Most of that road is, or 60% of the road is in St. Louis Park, 40% is in Hopkins, and then Hopkins is taking the lead on a project. Talking about pedestrian improvements, the City Council approved new sidewalk on Texas in that area. That's an area that is the only way for the South Oak Hill neighborhood to get out and over to Knollwood Mall. So we are now going to have sidewalk with this project on the east side all the way up to connect to that intersection. Also have sidewalk on the west side that's in St. Louis Park. Hopkins didn't quite catch on with that one. When you get in Hopkins, there won't be sidewalk, but we also have a bikeway on Texas itself. So with the completion of the bikeway on this Texas South, you'll be able to go from the South Regional Trail in St. Louis Park all the way up Texas to the North Regional Trail on a dedicated bike lane. So this will be our first really, almost the entire city bikeway, as Councilmember Roggen mentioned. We got 32 miles, we're almost to 12 with the installations this year. 6 are in place right now, 6 miles that is. And finally, MnDOT is going to be doing just to let you know, MnDOT's going to be doing a mill and overlay on Highway 7, and we've been working with them on some safety improvements in that corridor as well. And finally, Wooddale Bridge. So, many of you know where the Wooddale Bridge is. We have a project that's going to be coming online here within the next month to actually enhance the pedestrian bike infrastructure. I keep talking about peds and bikes. Enhance the pedestrian bike infrastructure on the Wooddale Bridge. There is sightline concerns on the ramps. And part of the problem is that when people get to the top, they have to block the sidewalk and they have to block that bikeway in order to get around and see around that barrier. So we have a project that the council will be it's going to be out in bid in March. And it will create a 7-foot wide sidewalk on both sides, moving those parapet walls back, clearing the sight lines up, and making it so that that bikeway, there's plenty of room for bikes, there's plenty of room for peds, and those cars don't have to have to block that mobility across the bridge. Last but not least, Southwest LRT. I can't talk about the Wooddale Bridge without bringing up Southwest LRT. Just to let you know, they are opening bids May 3rd. So, there's going to be a limited notice to proceed, very likely late summer, early fall for that project. So this is what we understand as staff, and so we're continuing to work with the Southwest office to ensure that all these projects that you hear me talk about, MnDOT, SPO, the county, all these projects are coordinated. So, you know, more to come. When those bids are open, we'll hear more. But they're looking at testing the system in 2022 and revenue generating, that's a tough word, revenue generating service in 2023 for Southwest LRT. So again, thank you all for your patience, and looking forward to an exciting construction year. I didn't do this segue. And next, Ann Mavity will be coming, Councilmember Mavity and Michelle Schnichter will be coming forward and talking about housing.
Hi, I'm Ann Mavity, the Second Ward Council member, and Michelle Schnitter, who's our housing supervisor. We're going to be talking about affordable housing in St. Louis Park. Many of you know that in my day job, I have worked on helping create and facilitate affordable housing in the community. And I have to say, it is such a privilege to represent this community that embraces affordable housing and understands that this is an asset for our community, that everyone in our community can live stably and not have to worry and make these kinds of choices every day that folks who don't have affordable housing have to make when they can't afford their housing and have to make choices about other things that they're giving up. So this is amazing, and I tell you what, throughout the community, throughout the state, there's very few communities when we talk about affordable housing that the council and the staff are saying, no, you haven't created enough units in this mixed income project. You need to have more affordable units, not fewer. So again, we should all be very proud of ourselves. I'm going to talk briefly about one recent accomplishment that a challenge and accomplishment that the council has addressed, and then Michelle will go over a little bit more detail about sort of the full range throughout the year of what we've done. In St. Louis Park, the majority of our housing is more than 30 years old, right? And because it's older, it tends to be more affordable. And in the industry, we talk about this as naturally occurring affordable housing. It's not really natural, but it's just been around long enough. It's simple, but solid, good housing that provides support for all ranges of incomes. And because St. Louis Park has quite so much of this, it's an issue that some of the folks come in, buy it, put some granite and stainless steel in, and upscale it, and all those folks lose their housing. And many of us together experience this at Meadowbrook, and there's other properties. So the council took that challenge on and said, what can we do to help make sure that we have policies in place to protect the tenants and residents, our neighbors, as much as we can, and retain as much affordability as we can in our community. And so there's a process that was put in place that's fairly unique to this, to the larger community, that frankly other cities are looking at us as a model, that brought together landlords, it brought together tenant advocates, and a range of other experts to the table to say, can we agree on ways to retain this affordability? And the result of that was this last Monday, actually, St. Louis Park adopted a tenant protection act policy that all of these diverse stakeholders agreed upon, that says when a building sells, the owner can't just kick people out and raise the rents automatically, but rather these residents and tenants need to have notice, at least 90 days to plan their future before they can't just raise the rents and evict people. And it provides it's not an answer to everything, but it provides a way to help folks out of the crisis situations that often are happening. And so we know that other communities are looking at this as a model, and we hope to continue that kind of leadership as we look at exploring more ways to make sure that the housing stock that we have remains affordable to the folks that are living in it and those that are coming behind as well. So with that, I'll just note one thing. On that policy I just mentioned, the tenant protection policy, we adopted it on Monday as a first reading. The second reading is April 16th, and then after that it'll go into effect July 1st. And with that, I'm going to have Michelle talk a little bit about our inclusionary housing policy, the Kids in the Park rental program, and the rehab and design program.
Thanks, Ann. I feel like I'm shrinking. I like what's going on here. We have put a lot of effort into the NOAA, what we call the Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing, the NOAA preservation policies this last year. And Ann is right that the work group was very unique, and we were very appreciative of all their efforts. They worked really hard together to recognize each other's issues and positions and come to some agreement on policies that would make an impact in the community. So I did want to mention a couple other NOAA preservation policies before we move on, or strategies that this group is looking at. The work group also came up with an idea for a legacy program, and that program would create a program for owners of NOAA properties who are interested in selling their property, but they would like to keep their property affordable. A lot of them are very invested in their property and their residents, and they want to maintain that affordability. And there are a number of preservation buyers in the metro area, like Aeon and Common Bond, that are interested in purchasing those properties and maintaining the affordability. So the program is really meant to show the benefits to these owners of selling their property to a preservation owner. So we're going to be working on that. And then another program that the work group was in agreement on was creating a rental rehab program for multifamily developments, and we're working on this with other housing agencies in the metro area, so it's kind of a regional effort. So we would create a program where we would provide financing for capital improvements at a desirable rate, and in exchange, the owners of those properties would have to commit to restricting some of the rents, so that they would have affordable units in those developments. So we're going to be working on those initiatives more in 2018. Now, in addition to the preservation, we also are still continuing to create new affordable units, and primarily we're doing this through our inclusionary housing policy. And because St. Louis Park is such a great place to live, which you all know, and it's very highly desirable for people to live here, and so we have a lot of development still happening, a lot of multifamily development. And so we're able to capture that development and create affordable housing units with our inclusionary housing policy. The way the policy works is that if market rate multifamily residential developer receives financial assistance from the city, they have to include a percentage of affordable units within the development. Now, this last year, I mean, we've had a lot of success with the policy, and so this last year, the council actually amended the policy, and they increased the percentage of affordable housing units that are required under the policy. So currently, in 2017, we had 3 developments that were completed, and they added 511 units in St. Louis Park. So we had the Shoreham that opened. They had 148 units, and 30 of those units were affordable. Central Park West opened at the end of the year. They had 199 units, and 6 of those units were affordable. And then 4800 Excelsior, they added 164 units, and 18 of those units were affordable. So we have 3 additional multifamily developments that have been approved, and we're hoping they're going to start construction in 2018, and then 1 in the planning process. All of those developments will have affordable housing units included per the inclusionary housing policy. The other thing we do is we provide a lot of rental assistance for low-income families through our administration of our federally funded rental assistance programs like public housing and housing choice voucher. So our housing authority actually administers those programs, and we assist over 500 households a year with those programs. This past year, the city partnered with STEP, and with the school district. And we created a new rental assistance program in recognition that kids need stable housing to achieve their full potential at school. And so we created a program called Kids in the Park. It's a rental assistance program. It serves low-income families that live in rental housing in St. Louis Park and have kids who go to St. Louis Park schools. And so they receive 48 months of rental assistance, but they also meet with STEP staff who assess their economic and their social needs. They'll establish a plan with them and even do case management if they need it. And to participate in this program, the households are required to take an active role in their children's educational process. So right now we have 9 families that are on this program. So that was a program we just started this last year. And lastly, the city continues to place a high priority on creating, preserving, and improving the city's single-family housing stock. And we administer a number of programs related to home rehab, design, and housing safety. We promote, support residents' efforts to improve their properties. And we also promote the creation of family-sized homes through our expansion programs. So this last year, home remodeling additions remained strong throughout 2017. We had 33 additions, we had 10 demo rebuilds, and we had 2 new single-family homes that were built. Both the home remodeling fair and also the home remodeling tour continue to be really popular with the tenants or with the residents in St. Louis Park. We recently held our home remodeling fair. We had about 1,000, little over 1,000 attendees. And then we'll be holding our home remodeling tour May 6th. And we typically have anywhere from 250 to 400 people that go through each of those homes. We usually have 6 homes that are on the tour. So that concludes my comments. Who's next? Greg and Tom.
And we are handing this off to Greg and Tom.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tom Miller, City Council Member at Large. Excuse me, this is Greg Hunt, Economic Development Coordinator for the city. If you live in St. Louis Park, or if you just happen to travel through it, or if you work here, no doubt you have seen all of the apartment buildings that have been going up, all of the hotels that have been going in, the new office buildings, the retail. That is redevelopment. Redevelopment is absolutely key for us as a city because we were fully developed. All of the land was used many, many decades ago. So this redevelopment is critical to the economic vitality of our city. These developers and investors come into St. Louis Park, they buy a parcel, typically with a building on it, and they raise that building. And what they do when they erect that new building is insert hundreds of millions of dollars cumulatively in the property value of St. Louis Park. So that's critical for us to continue to provide the kinds of services that St. Louis Park is known to provide for its residents. But it's also a really interesting barometer of not just the quantitative health of St. Louis Park, but the qualitative, because when those developers come in and they put up a building, they put their own money into that building, they have to be sure, and they do the research to make sure that there's people who really want to live in St. Louis Park. So it's a strong vote qualitatively for our city that when we put in a hotel, those developers know that people want to stay overnight in St. Louis Park, that they want to shop in St. Louis Park, that they want to eat in St. Louis Park. So that's one of the things that redevelopment does for us. But there is a balance that has to be struck as well. And so not every parcel has to be redeveloped, much to your surprise, perhaps. There are some parcels or some areas of the city that need to be just simply, not so simply, revitalized. And the Walker Lake Historic District is one of those. I think you see a slide up there that shows the logo for the Walker Lake Historic District. If you don't know what I mean when I say that, it's basically the area that surrounds the football field. You're probably familiar with where the high school is. It's the football field area situated between the community center and the high school. And there's a little business district in there. That was the original downtown of St. Louis Park, at least intended to be 100 plus years ago. And because of a couple of economic depressions, it never really came to pass. But this is an area that we would like to revitalize. The Walker Lake Historic District. T.B. Walker built that area, or started to build that area originally for it to be the original downtown, to be a hub for St. Louis Park. We're trying to revitalize that area in a few different ways. The first one that we did was we received a grant from Hennepin County. Thank you, those from the county, to help brand that area, to create an envelope for that area, a neighborhood for that area. So that's how we came to the historic Walker Lake District. Deb Heiser and team that you heard speak a little bit earlier, they are putting together a plan to re-engineer that area, to put in new streets, new sidewalks, not just basic infrastructure, but infrastructure that has a historic nature to it. So historic lighting, some other pieces that have a little bit more character to them than typically maybe you'd see in other parts of the city. So if you're a small business owner, I'll just make a pitch for it right now. Take a look at the Walker Lake area. There are some buildings there that are very affordable. If you're gonna buy or lease in that area, it's a great area to do business in. I also have to put in one more pitch. That's the area, a group of students at the high school are planning to open up a nonprofit student-run coffee shop in that Walker Lake historic area, a short walk from the high school. So lots of exciting things happening in world of redevelopment, and Greg's gonna walk through some of those buildings that you've seen pop up around the city.
Thanks, Tom. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Greg Hunt, the city's Economic Development Coordinator. Well, St. Louis Park certainly had another big year of development, and my responsibility this afternoon is to walk you through just a number of the major projects that are impacting St. Louis Park. These are projects that were either completed or are currently under construction or are pending. Certainly not all of the projects that are going on in St. Louis Park, as you well know, but just a handful of ones that we wanted to point out and recognize. The first one is the Shoreham. This is down at the southwest quadrant of Highway 7 and France Avenue. This is a $45 million redevelopment that Bader Development undertook. It's a 5-story, multi-story, mixed-use development that includes 148 apartment units, of which 30 units are affordable. There's also 20,000 square feet of commercial space in that building. North Memorial will have a medical clinic there, and then Bader Development will have its development offices there as well. Next project is 4800 Excelsior. This was a $48 million redevelopment just immediately west of Excelsior and Grand. And this is a 6-story mixed-use building that Widener Apartment Homes undertook. Has 164 apartment units, of which 18 are affordable at 60% of area median income. And it's anchored by a 28,000 square foot Fresh Time grocery store. Next project is Central Park West Apartments. This is the first of 2 apartment buildings to be built as part of Central Park West, which is east of West End, if you can figure that out. This is a 6-story apartment building that DLC Residential constructed. There's 199 units in the building. They're beautiful units, of which 6 are affordable. And just on the south side of this, and you can see it in the rendering, there is a central civic space with public art, which I invite all of you to go and look at this spring once the grass is in. It's going to be spectacular. The next project that I wanted to point out is one that didn't necessarily require council approval, but it's a significant project in St. Louis Park that I wanted to draw attention to. And this was a purchase that the Excelsior Group and Goldman Sachs made in St. Louis Park back in 2015 when they purchased what used to be called the Parkdale's office complex. And this was an office complex that had seen better days, and they came in and they have spent upwards of $13 million in renovating the interiors and exteriors of these buildings. They've done a spectacular job. These buildings are amazing, and they're now at Class A office standards. It's a beautiful repurposing of these 6 buildings immediately south of the West End. As long as we're on the community's north side, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Courtyard by Marriott, which was completed just in time for the Super Bowl. This was what's called a property intensification. This development was built on the north side of the current Minneapolis West hotel. It is built in their parking lot. It's a six-story, 142 room hotel undertaken by CSM. And as long as we're talking about hotels, we'll talk about the AC Hotel over at the West End. This one was just completed this year. This is a six-story, 126-room hotel. Has some amazing rooftop amenities with great views of the downtown. And this is phase 3 of that Central Park West development, and it was undertaken by TPI Hospitality. Project that's currently under construction along Highway 7 is Parkway 25. And this was built on the former Vecchio's and Value State property sites. And this development is a 5-story mixed-use building, includes 112 apartment units, upscale units, and 12,000 square feet of commercial space. It's being undertaken by the Sella Group. Project that received EDA and council approval last year and is just now starting to come, starting. You'll notice that the former American Legion building, of which this property replaces, just came down this past week, and in its place is going to be a mixed-use senior building called the Elmwood. This will be a 5-story mixed-use building with 70 active senior apartment units, of which 17 will be affordable, and there will also be 4,400 square feet of ground floor commercial space. And this is being undertaken by the owner of what used to be called the 36th Street Business Center, which housed the American Legion folks, and so he's undertaking this redevelopment on his former property. Via Sol and Luna. This is a project that the council, the EDA staff, and many others have been working on for a number of years. This is a major redevelopment at the southeast quadrant of Highway 7 in Wooddale. It involves 2 mixed-use apartment buildings. Altogether, there's 299 units, of which 200 will be affordable, and there will also be 99 live-work units. And I believe that these are going to be the first live-work units in the suburbs of the Twin Cities, so we're pretty excited about that. There's a 110-room hotel scheduled as part of this development, and there's another 16,000 square feet of commercial space that include a bike shop, a coffee shop, a cafe, a number of co-working office space, and in addition, there'll be a 10,000 square foot e-generation greenhouse and a 1-acre urban forest. A nonprofit developer, is currently undertaking this project, and we look forward to this project commencing this year. Last project that I'm going to touch on is Placia Place. This is a project that is currently before the EDA and the council. This is at on the former Santorini restaurant site up at the northwest corner of 394 and 169. What Sutter Companies is proposing to do is construct a 6-story office or a 6-story apartment building with 149 units, 15 of which will be affordable, and then a 6-story 100-room hotel. So those are the developments that I'm gonna touch upon, and more to come.
We are not slowing down, it seems. So I'm going to introduce Steve and Jason, who are going to talk a little bit about recreation.
The standing at the podium, and it's like a stick in the mud. You guys just didn't even move at all. So all of that is exciting stuff that's going on in the city. But now I'm going to talk about some fun stuff, park and recreation. Redevelopment, please. No, my name's Steve Halfin. I'm one of the at-large council members here in St. Louis Park. As you can see, there's a lot going on in the city over the past year, and upcoming in the year to come, actually there's a few more buildings that weren't even touched on. But as far as Parks and Rec go, we have a handful of projects in that area of the city as well. And through the Vision 3.0, that it came out a lot of different things about Parks and Rec, to include a lot of the racial equity work that the city's been doing that I know is going to be touched on in a little bit as well, to make sure that we create an ecosystem where diversity is expected and inclusion is inspected in everything that we do within Parks and Rec. We're also, within the Vision 3.0, let me just go to the notes a little bit here. The green, working with a lot of the green space within the city and making sure that we have places to go and recreate where everyone has a park within a handful of blocks of where they live. The projects that Jason's going to touch on will be the brand new outdoor recreation outdoor center, the Rock. With interesting process on how we pick that name. I won't go deep into that. But we are going to have a little video on that. The Westwood Nature Center project, which is still before council, and we're still working out where we're going to land on that. We have approved new fast pitch girls softball fields at Aquila Park, and we're also going to add some lights on some of the adult softball fields over at Dakota Park, so the programming can stay constant. And then the new outdoor skate park. And I know Jason's going to go a little bit deeper into all of that. So to try and get back on schedule, I'll stop talking.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jason West, Recreation Superintendent, and Mr. Mayor, it is exactly 6 o'clock. So if we go over, it's not our fault. Okay. First video we'd like to show is the Recreation Outdoor Center. This is what the Rock is. It truly is a community asset. So this is a year in review. This is what we did just this last year, 2017. We will be doing tours as well. Jason Eisel, the Rec Center manager, in the back corner. If you'd like a tour of the Rock, you can meet over in the back corner, and he can help you out with that. I'll try to go a little faster here. Let's talk about Westwood Hills Nature Center. We have a short video for that as well.
We have a gem of a nature center here.
Westwood Nature Center is where I bring my family, really to get outdoors, but to also get education.
The Park and Rec staff have done a fantastic job of programming this facility, and it has outgrown itself.
The expansion we're looking at is 3 multi-purpose rooms that can be used for classes or events, as well as an exhibit space that's separate from the classroom space.
There are kids from all socioeconomic backgrounds that can benefit from the facility here.
If we change and we start becoming more equitable for everyone, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
And now we'll go a little deeper into that project as well. Just to orientate all ourselves, Westwood Hills is right south of 394 and west of West End and 100. It's kind of nestled in the neighborhood. The current Nature Center conditions is built in 1981. It's 2,700 square feet. Obviously, if you've been there, you know it's a little cramped in there. It's inefficient, aging of the building. The maintenance needs not cost effective. And there's a distance from the parking lot is not accessible as well. We call it, it's kind of like a one-room schoolhouse. Who's been to the Nature Center? Can I just see a show of hands? Excellent. So the process, I won't walk you through the whole timeline, but we've been through an extensive process. We started talking about this in 2013. This just didn't happen overnight. We went through a master plan process in 2016, and then we went through schematic design phase in 2017, and now in 2018, we're in design development phase, with construction to take place in 2019, and then completion of 2020. Guiding principles of the building, we want the building as a teaching tool. Also, creating a highly functional building. Sustainability, we'll talk about that too with zero energy. And then obviously, we want to blend in with nature. We didn't want this big box sitting right in Westwood Hills. So you'll see some diagrams too, like you've already seen as well, about how it's nestled into nature. So here's one of the schematic design drawings. Here's the parking lot. We'll have 2 entrances. This is the main entrance. We'll also have another entrance over here for school students. You can see school bus parking, which we're lacking right now. And so that would be the entrance for the school students, and then the main entrance. Then we'll walk into the building too here. So the new features of the building will be right-sized program space. It'll be about 13,500 square feet. Obviously bring it closer to the parking lot. We'll have 3 multi-purpose rooms that can combine into 1 large great room. And then a separate inviting exhibit space and lounge spaces as well. We heard from the public, it's really hard when you come up and you have 75 school-age kids having a good time in the exhibit space, but with that parent with the stroller that walks up that long walk, they just want to turn away. That's what we don't want to do, is turn people away. So that's why I want to bring it closer to the parking lot as well. Just to walk through the building, here's that main entrance. Here's the vestibule. In that vestibule will be a restroom. We've heard loudly from the residents too. When the building closes, you know, it's still sunlight, and I'm walking the trails, I need a place to use the restroom or change my toddler. So that's what we're doing. We're keeping that area open and that restroom open from sunrise to sunset. As you walk in the facility, there'll be a welcome desk, office spaces, and then all this yellow area is public gathering space. We heard loudly too that we just want a place to gather, have a cup of coffee, things like that. So this is all exhibit space, a lounge area, and then a conference area as well. Then if you walk down the hallway, we'll have 3 program rooms like we talked about, multi-purpose rooms. We have program storage, restrooms, and then back of the house, kind of mechanical, electrical areas, and then this is the raptor areas, the raptor cages. Right now we have a red-tailed hawk and an owl. So what that could look like, these are just renderings. So this is what the multi-purpose room could look like. Obviously big windows, 20-foot ceilings on the ends. As you walk in the main entrance, here's that family restroom. And then this is the exhibit space. And what we have is three kind of ecosystems in the Nature Center. We have a wetland area, we have a wooded area or forest, and then we have a prairie. So we want to kind of explore those and showcase those as well. So it could look something like this. with some play features for children and some exploratory options as well. The Raptor area, as you walk around the building, the big patio deck areas. And we're looking at this could be a casual, quiet place for somebody to read a book, watch nature, maybe do some birding, or this could be an active program space too for outdoor class education. Zero energy. Basically, just this is the most simple way I can talk about it. Energy consumption, so what we use, we have to put back in. So what we use, whoops. So the energy consumption is the energy produced on site. And how we do that is many different ways. First of all, we need to tighten up that building. Create that envelope, it's called, to make it sure that it's a really tight building. How we do that is triple element glazing windows. We have radiant floor slab to increase the occupant comfort. We have solar panels on top of the roof, which will show that as well. Then we also have this wall right here. It's a thermal massing wall, meaning so when the sun comes in on that southern exposure, that heats up that wall. So then when we're gone, that wall will produce heat as well. And then we talked about solar panels. This is what that could look like as well on top. And I'll hand it back over to Councilmember Halford.
All right, go ahead.
You already talked about Aquila Park.
Yep.
And yep, we talked about that skate park, which was a great project. We actually worked with the engineering department, and there's an actual stormwater retention system underneath the skate park, which is a phenomenal. I watched that thing going in, it was amazing. And then we just basically had a concrete slab. We got to put a skate park right on top of that foundation, which was perfect. So thank you to engineering for working with us on that.
So to say the least, there's a lot going on, whether it be redevelopment or within the parks. And right now, we'll turn it back over to Mr. Mayor Jake Spano.
You know, they didn't even talk about the. I know you were talking about 2017, Jason and Steve, but you didn't talk about the Wild played, had their annual outdoor practice here at the Rock just a few weeks ago, which was a ton of fun. So I have good news, I have bad news. So the bad news is I've got like 12 pages of remarks. The good news is like half of it's already been given. So I don't need to, I'll be able to spare you all of that. I wanted also, before I make a few brief remarks, I also wanted to just recognize State Representative Cheryl Uwacom, I believe is here or was here. Oh, she's in the back. She's tweeting right now. She's busy tweeting. Don't bother her. No one look at her. She's busy tweeting. I also know that there are some school board members here. I saw Joe Tatalovich and Mary Tombeck and Ann Casey and Jim Beneke. Also here, so thank you to all of you for coming. I know the park ambassadors are in the back table back there, so thank you, ladies, for coming and joining us. And I also just want to recognize Becky Bakken, who is from Discover St. Louis Park, and I know there are members of the Twin West Chamber here with us tonight as well, so thank you to all of you for joining us. You know, a lot of what you've heard here today is really about leadership. And for all sorts of reasons, cities are the places where leadership is happening. We are closer to sort of our neighbors, right? So we're more directly, the decisions that we make more directly impact them, so we're maybe a little bit more mindful of that. We're smaller in size than states or the federal government, so we can pilot some things and see if they work before we try to take them to scale. And unlike Congress, where you've got like 535 members of Congress and you've got 201 state legislators, here we've got 7 people on the council. And we sort of have a joke, right? You only got to count to 4. You can get 4 people to agree on something, you can get something done. And it's a really, really amazing way to try out new things and new ideas. And we've always sort of been in that space of leadership, and there's a couple of items that I wanted to mention in particular. For example, we were the first city in the state to have curbside recycling, which is hard to imagine that didn't exist, but Jim Brummeyer, sitting in the back room over there, former city council member, was instrumental in that. We were the first city to have an eruv. And for those of you who don't know what an eruv is, you can ask one of your Jewish friends. They can explain to you what that is. But it was very, very sort of groundbreaking, and it's been around for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, when I worked in the city of St. Paul, the city attorney in St. Paul actually came to me and said, hey, you're a council member in St. Louis Park. You've got that eruv thing going. We want to do one here. How do we do it? And so there's also, I would say, we just talked about, Ann Mavity was talking about affordable housing and the abundance of affordable homes that we have here in this community. That wouldn't be the case had it not been for the point of sale inspection program that was started back in the 70s, which made sure that when people bought houses in St. Louis Park, they were in good condition, right? And so maintaining those buildings, even though they're old, like my house was built in the mid-40s, maintaining them makes sure that they're affordable, right? So these are all ways that we have been leaders. And you've heard some of the ways in the last year, at least, that we've been working on leadership. We were the first city to offer organized curbside organics collection. And for any of you who might follow sort of my musings on Facebook, you will see that Hennepin County is now going to require every city in the county to offer curbside organics collection by 2022. And so I think this is a fabulous, fabulous recognition of our leadership on that. We've approved multiple cable franchises, and we're doing fiber to the premises. Tim mentioned that the youth of St. Louis Park pressed us on a climate action plan, which is by far the most aggressive climate action plan in the state. We're talking about ranked choice voting. This is a change that has only been done in Minneapolis and St. Paul, which changes the way you vote for the people who represent you in the city of St. Louis Park. And next week, our Planning Commission is going to be sitting down to make recommendations. So you certainly can reach out to Melissa Kennedy, our city clerk, if you have thoughts, ideas, suggestions on ranked choice voting. Ann talked about our affordable housing policy, and it's always good to point out, always reminds us that for 10 years, our policy was that we would encourage affordable housing in our community, and the result of that was exactly 0 affordable units. And kudos really to Ann and to Tim Browson, who really pushed very, very hard early on to make sure that that was a priority for the rest of us, and I'm glad that they did. And she talked about just this last week, the tenant protections that we just passed. For those of you, though, who were here last year, you know that I talked the focus of my comments were about race and race equity. And so I just wanted to hit on a couple of things that have happened in the last year about our work and where it's headed. I'm pleased that this last year has been full of a lot of accomplishments in this area. Our Pathways to Policing program, which is sort of an alternative hiring program for hiring police, designed to bring more diverse candidates into your police force, has added 3 officers, and we're looking forward to adding more of them. That's a pioneering program that us and a few other cities in Hennepin County have been involved in. We've continued to work with the Government Alliance on race equity and our consultant, Gordon Goodwin, on sort of operationalizing our race equity plans for all of our departments. Last summer, St. Louis Park was awarded the President's Award from the Minnesota League of Cities for our work on race equity, which is a pretty high honor because it comes directly from, it's the president's choice. So the president of the Minnesota League of Minnesota Cities gets to pick. And so we were honored to get that award. And then last November, I was really, I just used the word honored, but I guess I'm going to have to use it again. Last November, I was really honored to be asked by the National League of Cities to speak at their annual convention about the work that's going on in St. Louis Park around race equity. I think sometimes when we're in the middle of this discussion, we sometimes don't pause to sort of think about what we're so busy wanting to do, and there's so much more to do, that sometimes we don't sort of step back and sort of recognize that we are doing some things that are very, very creative and forward-thinking. However, there's so much more to do. And this last year, I think probably the biggest accomplishment was we have hired a full-time race equity coordinator for the city of St. Louis Park, and her name is Alicia Sojourner. Alicia comes to us from the YWCA in Minneapolis, where she really made them a leader in this work. And she has, in her very short time, she sent me a list. I said, let me know what you've been up to kind of for the last few months. I'm just curious. And then I got like 3 pages of stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's very, very busy. And she's already challenging us and challenging our sense of accomplishment, but also making sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that we are getting things done, but that there is more to do. And so we look forward to having her working with us on all of those things. And she'll be working with us now to, as I said last year, we were going to be working it sort of internally within the city, but that we were going to start talking to the community about this. So I'm really excited. For example, one of the things that we're going to be doing is partnering with Community Ed to start sort of citywide courageous conversations. For those of you who are not familiar with the Courageous Conversations model, I've been through that program a few times, and every single time I have, I learn more and more, not just about other people, but about myself. But it really provides you an opportunity to think deeply and personally about your own experiences with race. And it doesn't mean that you end up walking out of there feeling like you're a racist, but it does make sure that you sort of confront and address and acknowledge those sorts of things in your life. So I think whether you grew up in a city like New Ulm or you grew up in uptown Minneapolis, you would find it tremendously useful. So I would encourage you all to take advantage of that. So these are some of the ways that our cities are leading. But for first ring suburbs, we either need to grow and improve, or we fall backwards. And I think that in order to do that, we have to have the support of our community. We've all been up here talking about leadership. And to be abundantly clear, at least in my mind, that doesn't come from the council. It doesn't come from city staff. It comes from the 50,000 people who live in this community. And I tell them all the time, and people who ask me who don't live in St. Louis Park, I say, we get tremendous latitude from our residents to fail, to try new things, to push harder and be first and pioneer new ways. And so on behalf of the council, I just want to say thank you to all of you and anyone who might be watching. Thank you so much for all of your support on this. We could not have done these things without you. It's really your dreams, your demands, your vision that allows us to do the work that we are doing. So with that, I look forward to 2018 and beyond. Give yourselves all a big hand. And we are getting close to the end, folks. We have just one last item on our agenda. This is my 6th year on the city council, and it's my 2nd year as mayor. And as I've gone on, I've learned more and more about the work of people who preceded us on the council. And I've been very impressed with the work that's happened. As in life, it's true that, the same I should say is true with our work in the city, that very little of any meaning is ever achieved on your own. And tonight's recipient of the St. Louis Park Outstanding Citizen Award led our community at a time of great change and laid much of the groundwork for our current success. Gail Dorfman is currently the executive director of St. Stephen's Human Services, working on homelessness, and is a member of the Metropolitan Council. Before that, she was a Hennepin County Commissioner serving Minneapolis and St. Louis Park, and from 1992 to 1996, Gail had her most important title, that of Mayor of St. Louis Park. During her time, Gail's fingerprints were on a number of signature initiatives, but none perhaps more impactful than her work to launch our visioning process, which we've talked a lot about tonight, and her advocacy for creating the strong neighborhood associations that we enjoy to this day. Now, this year, we completed our 3rd visioning process. We do them about every 10 years. And the effort is guided by a sustained opportunity to engage our citizens in what they want St. Louis Park to be. We then take that feedback, right, and we work that into our work plans for the next decade. And the vision document, to be clear, is not sort of a dusty thing that we do every 10 years and put it on a shelf, and then, when it's that time, we pull it off and say, did we achieve this? We, at least at the council level and the staff level, talk about that document almost every week, right? That this is reflected in the vision document. This is how are we articulating this desire? This is the way we're doing it, right? And that process is a living, breathing set of principles. And I don't think that it's overstating it to say that the visioning process is probably the most important document and public input process that we've got, because it really does, the sidewalk plan and all of these sorts of things are all driven from that document. So when I was also, when I was also the marketing director for the city of St. Paul, I read a study once that talked about community vitality, and the study basically landed in this spot where it said those cities that have the greatest economic, cultural, artistic cultural and economic vitality are those cities where people feel most closely identified with their neighborhood and their community. And I have been in some cities, I've lived in some cities that have very strong community identities, but none of them are probably as strong as my experience, at least in St. Louis Park. And I think that a lot of that comes from our neighborhood association system, which Gail basically single-handedly pushed through. And it's become a model for other cities, and I don't sort of say that glibly. I mean, I say that seriously. I've had other people in other cities say, who do we talk to in your city about your neighborhood association system? Because we need that in our community, right? And I think I'm always fascinated when I talk to people about neighborhoods in St. Louis Park. Everybody knows their own neighborhood in almost every city they live in. But in St. Louis Park, you know not only your own neighborhood, but you know the neighborhood to the south, and then, you know, right? I live in Brooklawns. I know that, you know, it's Brookside and Creekside to the south of me, and Elmwood to the north of me, and Meadowbrook to the west. And I think that identity and pride in your community is really something that has created for us great, great benefits. And it's also sort of become the place where, you know, leaders evolve, I should say, maybe. I know I was a neighborhood association sort of leader for a period of time, and I know that there's other folks that have gone on to serve on our boards and commissions that were neighborhood leaders. And so I have a personal debt to Gail for that. And while the focus of today is really about Gail's work during her time as city, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that even after she left the city, Gail has been a steadfast supporter of this city in so many ways, especially in the area of affordable housing. And much like she was a pioneer in the park, when Gail was a county commissioner, she pushed through the passage of the Affordable Housing Incentive Funds and transit-oriented development programs. And since their creation, in about, you know, right around 2000, those programs have invested over $4.5 million in St. Louis Park and have led to the creation of 851 housing units. Over half of them are affordable. And every single time we have needed Gail or asked Gail for something, she's always been there for us, and for me personally has been a great ally and supporter and friend. Our community and our region are a better place because of you, Gail. And I am pleased to present the 2018 St. Louis Park Outstanding Citizen, Mayor Gail Dorfman.
Thank you, Jake. It's late. I promise I'll be very brief. It's wonderful to look around the room and see old friends again and see new leaders in the city. And it's great to be back here at the Rec Center, so thank you all for being here tonight. You know, I ran for city council shortly after moving to the Twin Cities in 1988. And I worked pretty hard on that first campaign and won, surprisingly, but learned shortly after the election that there was another Dorfman family in town with a daughter also named Gail. And it turns out that some people had voted for her. In fact, maybe a lot of people had voted for her. And of course, I'll never know exactly how many, but sometimes you just get lucky in life. And I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have made St. Louis Park our family's home over the past 30 years, and amazingly lucky to have had a career in public service representing this city. I was reminiscing today with our daughter Sarah, who's here, about the remodeling of this rec center the first time in the mid-1990s. And the day before it opened, Sarah helped place penguin decals throughout the kids area at the pool. And we had a lovely poolside dinner that some of you will remember for the community that night. And the next day we unveiled the Evelyn Raymond sculpture that graces the entrance to this building. Evelyn was pretty old by then and was using a wheelchair. She has one of the 2 Minnesota sculptures in the United States Capitol building. One of them is a work by Evelyn. But this one in her hometown made her the happiest. And it was our first public piece of art, thanks to Friends of the Arts and Jim Bremmeyer. The strong neighborhoods throughout the city, public places like this one, Westwood Nature Center, Lenox Senior Center, public art, welcome signs, banners, landscaping, the pedestrian and bike trails that crisscross St. Louis Park, connecting us to one another and to the region, into our future light rail line. Yes, it will happen. Vision St. Louis Park, now in phase 3, a true community plan developed by the community for the community. Excelsior and Grand, one of the first livable community projects. Children First, excellent schools, diverse neighborhoods. All of these things make our community a special place to live, work, and play. Truly a community of choice for a lifetime. I was incredibly lucky to work here with so many excellent colleagues and city staff, and it's so gratifying to see the next generation of our city leaders, both elected and appointed, continue this work. I know from today's State of the City presentation that you're going to even be more visionary and inclusive than we were. And I know that if you ever go slightly astray, the forever young Clint Pyers will get you back in line. The other thing I know about this community, and Jake said this as well, is that the people of St. Louis Park expect and demand this kind of leadership. They want St. Louis Park to be first, to be innovative, to be a model for the state and region. They rarely oppose change and progress, but embrace it. And that makes St. Louis Park city government a really exciting place to work, and it's what makes this city a great community. So thank you so much for this award. I'm truly honored. This is Oscar. He wants to go eat. But I'm mainly thankful that I had the good fortune to make St. Louis Park my home. Thank you all so much. Hey, Ozzy.
I don't want to stand between Oscar and his dinner. So with that, I will just say thank you again to everyone for coming tonight and sharing your evening with us. And again, thank you for giving us on the council the opportunity and our city staff the opportunity to serve all of you. We appreciate it so much. So have a great evening. Thank you.